Welcome to Between Authors. I am your host, author Adrian Lopez. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to leave a like and a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification so you don't miss all the amazing authors coming up. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's generally finding that author or book you've never heard of or never seen before, sort of like the treasure hunt as a reader. The goal for my podcast is to bring to you those authors or books that you may never have heard of, but may be the treasure you've been searching for all along. Today in episode 6, I have author NJ Gallegos, also known as Dr. Spooky on Twitter. We're going to go over a little bit about her, what she's publishing, what she's working on, and maybe some of her plans for the future. Welcome to the show, NJ.
Thanks for having me, Adrian.
Yeah, it's great. I've actually been looking forward to this basically because of your love for horror and everything you put out there usually on Twitter is always cracking me up as I'm reading through it.
I like to be a menace on there. It thrilled me.
So why don't you give the viewers a little introduction to you, what you do, your likes, everything on that side.
Yeah. So NJ Gallegos, by day and maybe a night shift. I'm an ER doctor. And then I dabble with the horror writing. I'm originally from Colorado, actually from an area that's pretty heavy in UFO activity. So that's my one claim to fame. But now I live in the Midwest. So I fear tornadoes like a good God-fearing Midwesterner girl. So there's that. And I live with my wife and 2 cats who I have locked out of the room because they're quite obnoxious. And
we're also famous on Twitter.
Yeah, Cat Bane, which
Yeah.
I honestly is probably one of the best cat names ever. And I can't take credit for that, unfortunately. The wife did that one, and then Theodore, yep, they're also very famous. And yeah, when I'm not writing and doctoring, I like Star Wars, as you may know.
Mm-hmm.
Reality TV that is trash and rots your brain, and then beer.
That's
very
great.
Much.
So I know you touched a little bit on it, but why don't you go into your influences? Again, I know Star Wars and horror is a big thing to you, but why don't you just go over influences? It could be authors, it could be movies, it could be art, music, anything that just influences you in general.
Sure. So I'm probably like a lot of horror folks in being obsessed with Stephen King. He was my big introduction into like adult horror, because I did like Goosebumps and Fear Street, but Stephen King for sure. Star Wars, absolutely. Whenever I was younger, my mom used to take me with her to work. She was a medical transcriptionist. And I used to pack up all of my Star Wars micro machines in like a suitcase. And I would watch all 3 of the movies on this like VHS, like the one your teacher would wheel in.
Yeah.
Watch those over and over and play that with my little micro machines. And then honestly, a big one, even though I'm not musically inclined in the slightest bit, I really enjoy like electronic dance music, like trance and things like that. I don't know if it's because I'm like neurodivergent or whatever, but I have to like listen to music when I study or write and things like that. Like I was that weirdo in med school that would have like the big headphones and like not talk to anybody and just be kind of suspiciously looking at everyone.
I'm the same way. I need noise as I do anything. I can't do it when it's quiet. I've always been that way.
I don't know how people do it, because it's like the voices in my head, I guess, are too loud if there's not music.
Yeah, you have to shut them out. So you need something to kind of quiet them down.
That's right. It's either EDM or lithium. So you pick your poison, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big Star Wars fan as well. I'm old enough, so I went and saw Star Wars in the theater when I was 7. And
oh, really?
Yeah, and it saddens me every time I think about this, but I had all the original toys. I mean, all of them. I had everything when I was a kid, and I put them in storage, and the storage leaked, and they all got just messed up. So every time I think about that, it makes me sad. But I had all the original Star Wars things, and it's
Like
brutal. But I've
the
loved it over the years as well.
man, like the Kenner ones, like the absolute originals.
I mean, as they were
Oh
coming
man.
out, because when I was a kid was basically through the three movies. I was 7 when the number 4 came out, but
Yeah.
I was 7 at that one, so I was through my childhood when they all came out. So I was getting all the original toys, the action figures, everything as they were coming out for the movies. I had all the originals, and it's brutal every time I think about it. But
You could have been a millionaire, but
I know, what can I do? And then, so the other thing we have in common is horror. I know. So, how did you get into horror in general? What made you love it?
so it was a big thing between me and my mom. So my parents got divorced when I was pretty young, and my mom is just like a massive horror fiend. So yeah, maybe slightly inappropriately, but whatever. She would let me watch horror movies with her, like at a very young age. Like I remember watching Poltergeist and not really understanding like why are the chairs like stacked up on the table. Um, Chucky for sure scared the living crap out of me. But I mean, like she would like kind of explain things. She's like, "Oh, it's that's pea soup. Don't worry about what she's doing with the crucifix. It's fine. We'll talk about that later." Um, so yeah, I mean, she really got me into it, and I think that I enjoyed the feeling of being scared for whatever reason. I guess it's like kind of close to excitement. Like I think I maybe kind of confuse them for each other almost, maybe, which would almost explain why I'm an ER doctor now, because like that place can be kind of a horror scene at times.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So,
A lot of blood.
do you like it? Do you like horror basically across all of the genres and I would say decades as well? I mean, I'm much older than you, so I've watched from the original Universal Dracula, Frankenstein, which I love.
Yeah.
All the Hammer Studio ones that were in the 70s, which is basically their version of all the Universal classics, to all the recent stuff.
So I'm probably not as like versed in the older stuff, and I need to get more into it if I want to be like a true student of it. But one of the big ones of the 80s that I enjoyed was Hellraiser, and I think I was actually like probably a teenager seeing
Yeah.
that one. But that's the big franchise from the 80s that I very much enjoyed. When did The Fly come out? The one with the guy from Jurassic Park. I can't think of his name. Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, I believe that was 80s as well, maybe late 80s, I think.
Yeah, because that one kind of stands out to me. But I mean, honestly, I'm probably more of like a 90s kid when it comes to horror, like Scream. I love Scream, The Craft, which I mean, Nev Campbell might be also kind of why I'm obsessed with those. But like that, The Faculty. So I think that kind of stuff is like my jam. But I hate to say that I kind of enjoy the stuff that's like very gory.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just the fantastical part of it. It's like exaggerated compared to what I actually see in real life most of the time. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it kind of prepares me or something for it, but like I hate to say it,
The
but
training videos.
yeah, I'm like, oh, that's what happens when you stomp on somebody's head. Got it. Like like I like stuff too that's kind of like Human Centipede. It's gross, but it's like kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, he's an ER doctor as well. We were in the same residency class. He's actually probably a bigger horror nerd than I am. So he introduces me to a lot of like the older stuff, like Reanimator and Toxic Avenger and stuff like that.
Yeah, those were all great. I mean, you got so many of them that are just so bad that they're good. I mean, you just enjoy them because they're just so ridiculous. I mean, and that's
Exactly.
part of the fun with some of those as well. Is it's a great genre because just because all the ridiculous things that they bring out. Yeah, I mean, I've loved it from like to say from the start to the finish. If you've never seen the Hammer versions, those are great. Again, they're not great movies, but that was basically Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee when they were young, and they
Hmm.
redid all the Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, and I just remember growing up watching those too. Those are all great movies. Not great in terms of what the movie was, but just their takes because they always try to do the takes much differently than the original Universals,
Hmm.
and those are great. Um,
I'll
and
need
I
to
know
watch
as
those
well,
for sure.
yeah, I know as well the low budget horror has always been some of my favorites because they do such a great job when they don't have the budget, the way they get around it. Like I don't know if you ever saw Pumpkinhead, the original one. That was a great little movie.
Yes.
Evil Dead, Hellraiser, like you mentioned, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Those things are all
Oh
just
yeah.
great movies without the budget, and they just like, we're going to do everything we possibly can with this little bit of money that we have to do it.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive too if you think about it. Um, and one of the other things that I like too about horror, it's like whenever it's like a fine line between humor and horror, but when you hit it, it's like perfect. And even
Yeah,
when it's bad, it's still
yeah,
really good. Whereas like
yeah,
you watch a bad comedy and you're like, God, like I don't want to laugh at this stuff, but horror, you want to laugh at it.
yeah. And they're great. They're absolutely just great. So let's talk about a little bit about your book. This episode is going to air September 16th, and your book is going to be available for purchase, I believe, on the 19th.
Yep.
Correct? And it's called The Broken Heart. Why don't you give a little bit of you can give as little or as much as you want about the book, but kind of give the viewers a little idea of, what the book's about.
Sure. So The Broken Heart follows an abused housewife, Casey Phillips, who you would think she would have enough on her plate with her alcoholic, deadbeat husband and her son, who Ted Bundy Jr. esque. Um, and she develops heart problems secondary to her pregnancy with her daughter Eleanor. And it essentially culminates in her receiving a heart transplant eventually from a serial killer, as you do. And, you know, she starts getting her health and her strength back and a little dark transformation. And she turns into the anti-hero that you really can't help but root for, even as her body count piles up.
Yeah, I was lucky enough for you to send me a copy, and I haven't read through the entire thing yet, but I've loved it so far. I love
Thank you.
the way you wrote it. I love the tone and the dialogue, the way you have it. I love the medical references. I've never gone to medical school, but plenty of years of hurting myself, being injured and sick. I get the references. I sit there laughing at myself when a lot of those things come through. But I've enjoyed it. I've truly enjoyed everything I've read so far from it.
Thank you.
So I usually have a couple of questions I ask in regards to your book. Was there
Sure.
a favorite scene in the book? And it can be a scene or it could be the way it came to you or how you wrote it.
Sure. I would say my favorite scene is probably the OR scene where Casey gets her heart transplant. Um, I'm not obviously I'm an ER doctor. I'm not a surgeon. I don't handle like the sterile field very well. I was very terrified of like scrub nurses and stuff as a medical student because they're just watching you and they're just waiting for you to touch the blue thing and scream at you. But I liked kind of the medical aspect of it, kind of describing what's happening, but I think kind of inserting a little bit of tension. It was very enjoyable for me.
Hmm.
So I very much enjoyed that scene. And then not to give too much away, but I enjoyed what happens with her husband later.
Okay, so on the other side, was there a hard scene for you to write? Maybe something you struggled with either writing the scene, or maybe it was something of a memory or something that came up as you're doing it?
Yeah, so again, not to be too spoilerish, but there is an incident that occurs with her and her son Owen, Ted Bundy Jr. And it wasn't necessarily hard in the sense that he's like a kid, because like he kind of sucks. I mean, like he kind of deserves it. No spoilers, right? But it was kind of hard to like walk that line of like, what can you really do? Because I mean, he is like a 7-year-old kid. Like, you can't be too much. And I mean, my editor, like he had to be like, all right, Nikki, like you gotta back this down a little bit. And I was like, all right, I got it.
Research. Did you do any specific research for the story?
So a little bit. When I was in residency, I actually got the chance to take care of patients with LVAD. So for those that don't know, you get like heart failure or whatnot, and your heart's not functioning appropriately. So it's like this device that they kind of snake in and like plumb into your heart, and it's like a accessory heart, except you're wearing it outside your body. So I took care of a couple people like that in residency, and during my 3rd year, we have to do like a grand rounds. So I did a whole presentation about LVADs. So I knew a decent amount about it. Plus, I've watched Grey's Anatomy and, Denny Duquette with his LVAD wire. So I did have to do a little bit of refresher for that. And then a lot of looking up more so like surgical kind of stuff, because that's not really what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the big things that I had to do some research with. But the rest of it's just kind of stuff that I would deal with like at work and stuff. So already studied it a long time ago.
Yeah. So this is your first book, correct?
Yeah, first novel. Yep.
Okay, so with this being the first one, you going to publishing it, has it changed your writing process or how you approached it?
Oh yeah. So initially, whenever I had written the book, I had written it like from a third person perspective, which it just ended up, it didn't really work, because I think I was kind of inserting myself as the narrator like inappropriately. So it was pretty much done, and I had to go through the entire thing and switch it to first person from Casey's point of view, which was exhausting, but I think it was very helpful. But yeah, it's definitely changed the way I approach things, because previously I was definitely doing a lot more telling rather than showing. There wasn't nearly as much dialogue or things like that in the first drafts. And sitting down with my editor, he really hammered these points home. And another thing that was kind of difficult to get used to was taking like constructive criticism. Like being in residency and things like that, whenever an attending tells you like, hey, you're screwing up here, you have to like kind of take that like to heart, because like if you screw up, somebody could legitimately die.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to like hear that, I guess, at times. So you get kind of like, I at least got very defensive about things, and I had to learn how to like shift my mindset and like, hey, they're not saying this because like you're stupid or something like that. They're trying to help you get better. Mm-hmm. And once I kind of embraced that, it was like a light bulb kind of went off.
Yeah, like I said, you did a great job with it, since it wasn't your first way you wrote it. I mean, since you had to switch it up later, I love the way it's written. It's just it flows very smoothly. So you did a great job with that.
It was a lot of rewrites.
In terms of other stuff, right? future works or future books. I know you've mentioned in the past you're touching on some zombie stuff, but do you feel you're gonna, always have some kind of medical thing in your books, or was just this your first approach and how you thought about it when you wrote this?
I have a feeling that I probably will kind of gravitate towards some medical aspects just because it's what I know. I was listening to Stephen King's on writing, and it's actually one of the things that encouraged me to just go for it. And he said something like, you might be a plumber, right, in real life, but if you write about being a plumber on a spaceship or something, then it's interesting and it's something that so you'll be able to add your own like spin and twist it to things. And I just enjoy, kind of melding the two.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a good chance that I probably will have, a little bit of medicine in all of my stuff, especially, one day I want to do a big zombie kind of plague thing, just because I love zombie stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember. I think that was our first real interaction on Twitter. Is you were telling me how good the Train to Busan was, which
Yeah.
like tell me I still haven't watched, but I think that was our first interaction. You're like, you should watch this. This thing is great. So I do need to watch that. Is there? I know you, like you said, you love zombies, but is there specific, sections in the horror genre that you love besides zombies? Is there other sections of there that really you just enjoy?
So definitely splatterpunk. I do enjoy it when it's well done. You can't be just like gratuitously extreme for like shock value. It has to have a little bit of substance to it. But when it's pulled off, I think it's fantastic. It's almost like poetry, I guess, to me. Although I don't really understand poetry, but like it's my poetry.
One of the other questions I wanted to ask you in terms of the zombie story. I don't want you to get too much into it because you're working on it. But one of the things I did with my werewolf one is I wanted to come with a different approach because I wanted to keep it different than what you normally see, just to have a different point of view. Do you find yourself doing that with the zombies in terms of what the starting point is or why it began? Do you find yourself trying to find or coming with a different direction just to keep it fresh and something new?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about that because I have an idea as to what I would like the zombie apocalypse to start with. And I'm just gonna say it's I think it's gonna be like a protozoa, like kind of you've heard like people are going swimming in like these freshwater lakes and stuff, and then they get the I should know this since I'm a freaking doctor. It's something that goes up your nose and it eats your brain. But like it is difficult though because they've already done like kind of like a rabies, like rage virus. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it for sure.
Do you ever think you're gonna find yourself writing anything outside of the horror genre?
I could maybe see like some sci-fi sort of stuff. I would enjoy kind of doing like maybe like a dystopian sci-fi future sort of thing. But the amount of world building that goes into sci-fi is kind of daunting,
Yeah, you have to build everything. Everything in the back has to be built. I mean, everything has to be explained, and
yeah,
I would
like
think
the
that's
littlest
difficult.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe one day, maybe that'll be my like gold medal that I'm going to strive towards.
The for horror, is there other storylines, other books that you've thought about writing? Other classic monster tales or anything on that side that you've had in the back of your mind that you'd like to do?
So I do want to do a bit of like mad scientist kind of thing, you know, playing God a little bit. And I'm actually working on my second draft, which would be my second novel, and hopefully, of a story of a neurologist who invents these migraine chips that, you know, they implant and they stop migraines. And I mean, I don't know if you know anybody that's suffered from this, but like they will literally do anything to stop this, right?
Yep.
But you know, there's going to be some untoward side effects that could be murder.
Could be, possibly, may happen.
maybe a little bit of murder.
Well, that's probably better than a lot of the side effects for the medication they have out now. So I was like, I was like a chance of sudden death. Like, okay, but you'll get rid of the rash, so you're fine.
Yeah, you'll look great when you're dead. So there's that. I do like the werewolf stuff. I do like that idea. I've written one short story that's been published called Full Moon Rising, which involves a full moon in an ER, and they bring a patient in that you just think's on drugs, but it turns out not to be. But I would obviously like to kind of expand that into, I mean, more of a novella length or something of that nature.
Yeah, that sounds great too. Yeah, I mean, I love the werewolf genre, really, of horror. I mean, I enjoy all of them, but I try to, like I said, I try to keep mine different. So it wasn't the usual, you know, from a curse, or you get it from, you know, the bite, or it came down, you know, it's always on a full moon. So I try to keep it completely different. And, you know, I just put a lot of death in it. I mean, I just kind of, that's the overall theme there.
How far are you into yours?
It's already done. I'm gonna have it edited probably within the next week or two. So my plan is to have it come out in October, right, for Halloween.
Nice, yeah.
But you know, I know we talked about it, and as soon as I have it edited, I'll definitely send you a copy over so you can read it. But yeah, I try to keep it completely different, and I'm trying not to watch or read anything either, because it's not that you'll do it on purpose, but I don't want anything influencing the back of my mind going, hey, you know, I thought of something. It's not really, you saw something that reminded you. So I've avoided everything werewolf related to just make sure I stayed on the story. And yeah, but it's.
Do you have like a favorite werewolf movie or book, whatever?
I do have a favorite book, and I've mentioned this in a couple of the interviews I've done, and I don't remember the author or the book because it was something my uncle gave me when I was young. It was part of a short story collection, and in the story, this guy is a werewolf, but he has to fight his way into hell, and he's just tearing through these demons as he's fighting his way into hell. And that just stuck with me, that whole short story, because it was amazing. Just all the you know, just the action and just the carnage that happened as he's trying to get into hell. And I've always loved that story. That just stuck with me on that side. And one of the other things me and a couple of the other werewolf guys that have written ones talked about is I've always been a huge Hulk fan from Marvel. And it's kind of similar with that transformation just to that primal, you know, just anger that you're going after. And basically that's the werewolf, right? You don't have the you know, the slutty gigolo vampire that's going around, you know, that wants to take you out and then he's gonna kill you and drain you. You don't have that. You don't have the Frankenstein that's just, you know, just moving along through things. You just have that primal urge to eat and kill you, right? And I always thought that was just a good storyline. But in terms of movies, for me, I mean, American Werewolf in London always stands out. That's just a great movie. Yeah. That transformation scene being that far back was still amazing.
It's not bad.
It's for being that far back in you know, in cinema in terms of what they had to work with. It's still one of the better scenes. Ginger Snaps I always thought was great for the small budget they had. Dog Soldiers. There's just a bunch of great movies that are in that genre that just come from different angles of the werewolf story that I've always loved. I've just loved it.
Yeah, I can see, because like you said, vampires are almost more I don't know if sophisticated is the right word, but it's almost like a little like dance, like, ooh, are you gonna invite me in? And the werewolf is just like, I'm gonna rip you apart. Like there's something more terrifying about that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with the vampires, it's gone to not as much recently, but a lot of them went to basically. I don't know if you remember when you had all those guys coming out that were the so-called dating experts, and they go, you go through these 5 steps and you get any girl you want. That's what the vampires always remind me of, right? That's the way they keep getting rid of it. I was like, these guys are basically the same thing. They're just looking for food, and they kind of went away from that too much on the other side. Even in the werewolf thing, when I wanted to start writing that and did a little bit of research, I kept seeing how much werewolf romance was popular, and I was like, what is going on? Why is werewolf romance? All these women fall in love with werewolves. This guy's going to eat you, right? He doesn't want to go out to dinner. You are dinner, right?
Maybe they do like they're going to eat you,
But it was so odd that they've taken it in that direction. I mean, I'm not surprised. Everything can get taken in a certain direction, but
yeah, what is it? Rule 32 or whatever.
Yeah,
34. Yeah. If it exists, it's on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a weird thing that I purposely. There's a part in my book where he's finding out about werewolves, because he didn't know he was one, and kind of what packs and stuff work. And there's a part where he finds out that the alpha is supposed to have like a female alpha, and he makes a joke like, I don't have time for that, because I was like, I don't understand the whole thing, right? So there's a section there where he's like, I don't have time for that, and it just gets kind of tossed away because I just didn't understand how. I mean, apparently it's huge. It's a huge part of the genre that just surprised me when I read it.
Maybe they need like a werewolf tender or something, like Howler.
I mean, it goes into the in furries where it was popular. I guess it's the same thing. I don't know.
That's true.
For you, for the your idea on the mad scientist storyline, one of the things you should watch, if you can ever watch it, is on the Hammer, their Frankenstein movie, which I think is called The Curse of Frankenstein. Was actually Peter Cushing as Dr. Frankenstein and Christopher Lee's Frankenstein. But they do theirs from the storyline of Dr. Frankenstein. So it's more him. It's more his ego, what he tries to do, him wanting to be God, control everything. So that's a completely different approach, but it's more on him, all the stuff he wants to do. And that might be a good thing to kind of watch to give you that kind of not storyline, but give you that idea of that approach.
Well, it's kind of interesting, like the Frankenstein thing, like he's the one, the Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein's honestly the bad guy, I think. Like he just creates this guy, this poor monster that just wants to, be accepted, and he just, throws him out there. And I did recently read, not recently, like in the last couple years, I read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Like I was trying to go through all the old stuff, Dracula. That I did War and Peace just so I could brag about it and be like, I read War and Peace. But yeah, I like that about the mad scientists, because they're the ones that's actually the monster, not really what they create, honestly.
Yeah. That might, if you can ever find that might be a good one. Theirs are very interesting because they were doing it a little after. Well, they're doing the 70s, right? So it's much later than Universal, but they really try to do a different take on it. So it's always a different way they approached it. And having Cushing and Lee in there, they really carry those movies. I mean, again, they're not great movies, but those guys just carry those movies through. Even their werewolf one was Oliver Reed when he was young, was the werewolf in that too. So they're great movies if you ever get a chance to see them, to just kind of watch that different approach.
Yeah, I like watching, Christopher Lee do anything, Count Dooku.
Yeah.
That I'm down.
Yep. So future, what does future look like in terms of writing or things you want to get into? Do you have other goals, the stuff you would like to do?
So initially, when I had written The Broken Heart, I hadn't really envisioned it as a series or anything. I thought it was going to be a one and done. But now, being finished with it and talking more about it, I do like the idea of potentially a sequel following Casey. Maybe, kind of a vigilante justice kind of thing, because I just love a morally gray character that like does horrible things, but like you're kind of rooting for them. That's probably one of my favorites. And then I've been kind of toying with the idea too of like a prequel following the serial killer whose heart she gets. But I don't have any concrete ideas. Those are just more like floating around in my head. Like I said, I'm working on the second novel, and it's actually coming along fairly well. So I don't have any like anticipated time as to when that would be out though. And then, I mean, the big thing I like is Vocal. I'm on that Vocal media platform, and they have challenges. So you can actually win money, which is, a nice incentive. But their challenge prompts, I find, are very helpful because it takes my mind in a direction that I would not normally go to. And not to brag or anything, but I did get a runner-up on kind of murdery story. So, and like I wouldn't have come up with that idea on my own.
Prompts are great for writers in general, but just to keep honing your practice, it's a great way to put yourself in an uncomfortable position. I do a lot of them with the poetry stuff when they have the word prompts, and a lot of times I've seen these things, and I may write a short story. I may not submit it because I forget, because I was supposed to submit something for August. I completely forgot. But it's a good way to get you into just, thinking about a different avenue or a different approach to things that you may not have thought of before.
Absolutely. Like one recently was the write a chapter of like your memoir. And I mean, there's probably parts of my life that could be considered a horror tale if I would explore that, but I went a different direction. So I mean, it didn't really have much horror in it unless you find running 22 miles on a treadmill terrible, which I mean, actually that was pretty awful, but it was more so yeah, it was definitely a challenge because I'm not used to writing, like, first off from a almost truthful perspective. So it was almost like I was bearing my innards more so. I was showing you my heart, but not like the bloody, gross way that I'm used to.
I will, for the viewers watching, I'm going to leave all the links down below for NJ's book coming out. We may have the link as of the airing. If not, then I'll link to your website or something, so they'll be able to find it when it comes out. Sure. 3 days after the airing of this. Any other links you want to leave down below for them so they can be able to find you and follow you. For those that don't follow you on Twitter, again, you're a great follow. You have me cracking up all the time. I was following along with your dentist cage match this morning. You had your dental appointment, and that was cracking me up as I was reading that. But you're an absolute great follow for those that don't already, and I'll make sure that your Twitter handle or X handle is down below too as well for everybody that wants to follow you. I know I keep saying Twitter. I haven't changed it yet, but I
agree.
I know. I mean, this is great. I've really been looking forward to getting you on here to talk, horror, and I know we didn't talk too much Star Wars, but we do have that connection between those two. It's just a reason to bring you on again after when you're ready for your your next book.
Right. We can talk about was it Death Troopers, the stormtrooper zombie story. So yeah, we can talk about that.
But I
do
want to.
I don't want to like intrude or anything. I did bring some props here. I mean, I do have my zombie story that is going to be coming out October 5th.
Yeah, I saw that. I did see that, and I love the cover on it too. Yeah, like I said, we'll put whatever links we have available for you.
Sure.
And if not, we'll at least get your website away, so at least they can find them as they come out. But I'm looking forward to finishing this book, The Broken Heart. I've like I said, I've enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the way you wrote it. It's just it's a little bit of a different take, the way your dialogue goes through, and I really did enjoy that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly sometimes feel like my dialogue's not the strongest, just because I'm not as used to it, I guess. But so thank you.
I mean, I have the same problem with the dialogue too. So it's not my strongest part of my writing either. So it's something I'm trying to work on. But what it reminded me of, and I'm not saying that this is the way it's written, but it reminded me kind of the timing and pacing of old, like the Gumshoe detective stories. It's that pacing of how you wrote it and the dialogue, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that pacing of the way you did it. It was just a great, well written story so far.
Thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of it.
I definitely will. I have to finish it soon. I got too many things going on is my problem. I got way too many things happening for me to do anything, finish anything at the moment.
I know that feeling. It happens. Yeah. You have too many fingers in the fire. What is it? No, I don't know. Whatever.
Well, for horror, it would be fingers in the fire. So we'll stick with that one.
Yeah, that's true.
Or other limbs, whatever you're sticking in there.
Whatever you like.
Yeah. For the viewers, again, please, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like below. Leave a comment for either NJ or myself. Let us know things you enjoy, things you have questions about, or anything on that side. We'd love to read them. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications again to not miss any of the amazing authors coming up. And again, I really want to thank you for coming on. This was a lot of fun. You're welcome to come on anytime you want to talk horror or Star Wars in general. I love both of those things. So you're always welcome to come back on. Maybe we'll have you back on and, Halloween episode or something we can go over.
Oh my gosh. I would love that.
Yeah, so that would be fun.
Thank you for having me on. Seriously, this has been awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
I truly. You know what I
liked?
liked? You knew how to say my last name really well.
Well, I should, since my last name is Lopez, but the problem is I don't speak that much Spanish. So I never pronounce a lot of the words that great. So a lot of times I try to squeeze it in quickly. So I go, did he say it right or not? I don't know. He said it too fast.
You said it perfectly, but I'm the same way. Like I'm like on my Duolingo, and then I go to the Mexican restaurant. I'm like, I'd like an enchilada.
my problem, I don't know if you have the same thing, is I understand it, right? So I can watch movies, I can even read in Spanish and everything, unless somebody's talking too fast. But there's just, when I try to come back out with it, there's some kind of block. I was like, why can't I say this? I know exactly the entire conversation. So I wind up like responding in Spanglish or English, where, it's a mixture, but it's like, I don't understand why it doesn't come back out more smoothly.
Yeah, no, I can read it fairly well, but yeah, speaking it, it's like my brain like wants me to not do it because I know it's not going to be perfect.
That might be, honestly, that might be what it is for us. We know it's not going to sound quite right. So maybe our brain's like, don't do it. Don't embarrass yourselves.
Yeah. Don't embarrass your ancestors like this. Yeah, probably.
But this has been a blast. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm very thankful for you coming on, and I'd love to have you again at some point just to go over, horror in general would be great. But thank you for coming on, viewers. I hope you truly enjoyed this, and this will be coming out September 16th, and this will be episode 6. So thank you again, NJ, and thank you, viewers, for watching.
Thank you.
you.